Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back on a video from Nux Taku. Got an old one, it's one I've been wanting to check out for a while, and recent things have made me want to check this out further. I don't know if you follow me on Instagram, I post all my Funko Pops. I post like a different Funko Pop every day, and I posted one of Gajeel in his Dragon Force form. That seems to get more likes than any of my Dragon Ball ones. And then I watched Giguk's video on his second channel where he ranked all of these shonens, and he put Fairy Tail right at the bottom with Boruto, and I was just like, huh, seems to get a lot of stick, this show, but it also seems to have a lot of support on the other end. So I know Nux loves Fairy Tail, always says it's one of his favourites, so let's check out the No One Understands Fairy Tail Feels Warning. It's an hour long, get a drink, let's get into it. This should be good. Because I did drop off of Fairy Tail, I did start watching it. I watched like the first couple of seasons and then...
Fairy Tail brought up in a discussion, there is almost always, without fail, one of two points of view that the discusser is trying to get across.
What's that?
Fairy Tail is a bad anime and I hate it.
It's trash.
Fairy Tail is a bad anime and I love it. Anyway, the consensus though is, everyone seems to say Fairy Tail is a bad anime. The Fairy Tail fans will die for it, the haters will hate indiscriminately, and the people that are semi-neutral towards it will edge on the side of caution and say, oh yeah, it's garbage, so that they're not insulted per se.
So that people don't be like, hey, why don't you have the same opinion?
As far as YouTube goes,
damn!
I don't see anyone actually really praise Fairy Tail. I've never seen someone double down on praising Fairy Tail. The majority of people don't talk about it.
Oh, there's the anime, man.
Just absolutely.
Oh, and Anime Sins is just comedy, so that's like, you know.
Joey the Anime Man. I've praised Fairy Tail in the past because there are many things I believe it does very well, and I've gotten YouTubers DM me privately on Twitter saying, yo dude, don't give Fairy Tail a platform.
No way.
Actually be a voice of reason defending it. We want it destroyed. It's garbage.
Oh god.
I'm not going to tell you who that is because it may be taken poorly, even though I personally found it hilarious. But
why would they? That's so weird. Don't support this anime.
This video is not taking either of the approaches. I'm not saying Fairy Tail is a bad anime and I hate it, and I'm not saying Fairy Tail is a bad anime and I love it. I'm saying Fairy Tail is a great anime,
right?
I love it, and this is why it's amazing. It has a huge following.
It does have a huge following, it really does.
Sometimes watching it, there is something to it whether you like it or not. Today, the ultimate Fairy Tail defensive analysis video telling you why Fairy Tail is amazing and no one apparently understands Fairy Tail. Now, Fairy Tail is like 330 episodes long, so I'm not going to be going through every
That's not
scene
too much, actually. Huh.
This was awesome, even though it looked like an asshole. Not only will I not do that, but I might do that. If you want to criticize Fairy Tail for an overabundant amount of fan service, or perhaps stupid
so I'm sure I was like
in certain areas,
60 episodes in.
Arc conclusions, all the power to you. There is reason to criticize Fairy Tail very much. What it does right, though, in my personal
is the power of friendship.
Many thousands of Fairy Tail fans outweighs that to the point that, low-key, it doesn't even matter anymore. This is the only really defensive Fairy Tail video on YouTube, actually really praising it for not only what I did as well, but for what I think it mastered like no other anime ever has. So, while I can recognize its flaws and can fully accept why someone would dislike the series due to what I consider the superficial nature of the show, at least give this video a chance before shooting your mouth off in the comments why my opinion if anyone really loves this show, then for that individual, Fairy Tail is a masterpiece. And since art is subjective,
it really is.
Get away from that individual
I got up to this bit. I got to that bit. I got up to the tournament.
But it is definitely one that is extremely close to my heart. There is one theme in Fairy Tail that carries over throughout everything in the series.
Friendship.
This one very important detail that I believe people semi-understand, but don't really understand the scope or breadth of it. This is what makes every amazing scene really amazing, and this is what really connects you to the entire series. Yes, some background is required, and this will probably be a very long video. I mean, this is YouTube's masterwork on Fairy Tail, since for some reason everyone else is scared to talk about it. The only two videos I found on YouTube semi-praising Fairy Tail was Evanito saying, I love Fairy Tail, even though it's terrible, which again does not help your case here, bro.
No.
Cartoon Ciphers said why I'll never stop loving Fairy Tail and explained it from a personal perspective, and low-key, that video is actually really beautiful. But again, played by the narrative that fairy tale itself is not good, it just came at a time of my life where I liked it. I will link both of those videos.
Cool, cool. Yeah, that's nice they're sharing those out.
Anime man's absolutely bashing fairy tale for being an attempt at a knockoff of One Piece. A stance which I hope very much to dispel by the end of the
I would never see fairy tale as a knockoff of One Piece. No, I don't see that.
This massive journey we're about to be undertaking out of the way, we're going to be breaking this up into several segments, being that, well, it's going to be long, and me babbling without any direct direction will be difficult for all of us. So first and foremost, we have to talk about the protagonist of fairy tale.
Natsu.
Nearly every single
That's not
shonen story
Natsu.
focuses on
That's
a central
Goku.
protagonist to carry the story forward. The adventures of said protagonist that us viewers can relate to as we journey alongside them, growing as the protagonist grows, experiencing as the protagonist experiences, and while the protagonist reaches a stage of fruition where they are finally recognized, or they fulfill the task that they believe in, finally discovering themselves, us viewers can discover something about ourselves along the way. The shonen protagonist role, in my opinion, even though it sounds awfully generic, is fascinating. It's a character that I feel like is almost impossible to truly get right, and can never really be the favorite.
There's always problems and flaws, isn't there? Yeah, everyone always likes the other characters better.
The protagonist always wins the popularity contests. However, to use this as a simple example, if the protagonist gets 3,000 votes and the second place only gets 2,000 votes, that means the protagonist won by a landslide. But at the same time, the support cast is far more nuanced than the protagonist, and therefore, everyone has a different favorite support member. If you add the total votes of all the support members, they far surpass the votes for the protagonist.
Definitely,
so
actually,
the
yeah,
protagonist
damn.
takes some form of generic role in order to push the story forward. A very nuanced character can never really enrapture the broader audience, or be a character that can actually play off other characters in any given scenario. Genericism is the protagonist's downside, but it's also the protagonist's greatest strength. I'm not gonna go through my personal hot takes of every shonen protagonist right now, that's
No,
kind of
cool.
not what I'm doing.
Okay.
But I mention that because Natsu is a very nuanced character, and therefore does not fill the role of a protagonist. Your generic shonen protagonist is not someone like Natsu in the slightest. Granted, Natsu has the most important role if you had to pick any individual character from Fairy Tail. I guess Natsu is the most important. I mean, he does take down the big baddies at the end.
Yeah, of course he does. He's the main character.
He is very much not like your average shonen protagonist. When you look at a shonen character that's meant to take the lead role, we never want to polarize our audience. We want everyone to relate to him to some degree. That's why if you look at shonen main characters, almost all of them have generic powers. Asta has anti-magic. He doesn't have some elemental magic.
Oh, I suppose this is interesting. Super strong, yeah.
Naruto, he uses Rasengan, which is essentially a really powerful melee attack, and Shadow Clones, which is, again, normal type, not some
That's cool.
They always have well-rounded, non-niche powers.
Yeah, it's not overcomplicated whatsoever. It's just very simple to explain.
That is a polarizing element. Maybe people like ice better. Maybe people like lightning better. And the reason why I mention all of this is because Natsu does not have the build of a main character, and that's because Natsu is not the protagonist of Fairy Tail. Lucy is not the protagonist of Fairy Tail either. If you look at other generic protagonist traits, they win the big fights at the end of the arcs. They're somehow related to the big main bad guy at the end
totally
or
sense,
something.
Jesus.
And, well, for the most part in shonen anime, they're dudes. Neither Natsu nor Lucy fit the bill even slightly for a protagonist, and that's because the protagonist of Fairy Tail is the guild
Fairy Tail. Right, okay. I remember him saying that in something else before.
This point is the single most important thing to understand about the series. You're not following Natsu's journey to find his dad. You're not following Lucy's journey to actually become a wizard she can be proud of herself for. You are following the evolution of this guild Fairy Tail. The challenges they have to overcome, the inner dynamics of the guild. You don't have to find yourself as the protagonist's individual character finds his identity. You find yourself while the guild Fairy Tail finds its identity. Now, here's where the knockoff One Piece.
Right, come on, yeah, I want to hear this.
Honestly, while there are certain things that Fairy Tail copies from One Piece, and I mean, Guild Arts is literally knockoff things, and I don't care because Guild Arts is completely badass.
Guild Arts was sick.
Then Shanks is the Straw Hat Pirates in One Piece are by no means the single protagonist of the series. Luffy is clearly clearly the protagonist.
Yep,
of
definitely,
One Piece,
yeah.
and One Piece is amazing for entirely different reasons than Fairy Tail.
Fairy Tail.
One Piece is better. I like One Piece more. What can I say? But that doesn't at all detract from the greatness of
One Piece is so sick. Okay.
There's a simple difference between the Fairy Tail Guild and the One Piece crew. Not to either of their detriment, the One Piece crew only accepts crew members that Luffy wants. Zoro has the role of first mate. Sanji has the role of cook. Nami has the role of navigator. Brook has the role of musician.
Yep.
Frankie has the role of shipwright. Chopper has the role of doctor. Robin has the role of archaeologist, because that's a thing you need on a ship. Even at the end of the Dressrosa,
Okay,
when other people wanted to join
that's
the
so
crew,
funny.
he didn't let them. He instead made them join his overall fleet, where they could still do whatever the hell they want to do, and they're not
Just
bound
fan
by his
club.
flags.
Cool,
So
fan club, yay.
they are invite only. Fairy Tail is not. Anyone with the right ideology can join Fairy Tail. It doesn't matter if you're fulfilling a role, and it doesn't matter if you're powerful in any way or not. The one thing that every Fairy Tail member has in common is their hearts are all in the same place. And if your heart can be at the same place as the Fairy Tail members, well then you, my friend, are a member of Fairy Tail.
My God.
Every anime protagonist that you can relate to in some shape or form, that you can cry when they cry and that you can laugh when they laugh. Fairy Tail, the guild itself, is more than just something you can relate to. Yes, you join in their laughter and join in their tears, but not just because you relate to someone, because you are part
Part of it.
Absolutely no
Belonging.
series has accomplished this to this end. I love the One Piece crew. I
Yeah.
love Class 1A in My Hero.
Do you,
I
though?
love the Black Bulls.
The Black Bulls are class in Black Clover, to be fair. Like, I for what I watched, I loved them.
A student in Class 1A, and I don't feel
I think I watched 74 episodes of Black Clover. I should get back into that as well, Jesus.
I am not one of them. I am a member of Fairy Tail. Now, that may have sounded cringe, and well, I understand that, but we must swim through the thickness of the cringe.
Let's swim through the cringe, y'all.
I apologize, but I have to kind of go all out for this video. I have to make my points clearly, because
Yes,
someone
you do.
else talks about Fairy Tail in a positive light. Remember
Like I
this
just said,
well,
like recently, this
we'll
was like a
be
couple of
coming
years
back to
ago,
this.
and
We'll be
still
coming back
people
to the
are
ideology
pooping on
that
Fairy Tail,
you're
but there are
a member of
fans,
Fairy
because
Tail.
my Funko Pop got more
Fairy Tail
likes
is the
than, like...
protagonist of Fairy
Oh,
Tail.
yeah. I don't know, it could be because it's a convention exclusive, I'm not sure. I'll show you at the end of the video.
Fairy Tail is a bunch of wackos. It's something I love to see in anime. It's something that always brightens my day. The Straw Hats are all weird in their own way, and the Black
If you want to see my
Bulls are all
Instagram, like,
wackos
just
in
search
their
Pixel
own
Party Pals
right.
on
It's
there.
something that's always a pleasure to see, because as a self-proclaimed psychotic mad lad, I kind of sort of feel at home a little. Of course, the ideal of
I'm on
feeling
TikTok
at
as well.
home fits so much better with a guild like
Pixel
Fairy
Party
Tail,
Pals,
where you technically are a member of the guild according to the meta writing of Fairy Tail. But again, stow that away in the back of your mind. We will come back to it at a later moment. For now, let's talk about why the psycho wackos in the guild are so amazing. So, every character has their own really wacky interactions with every other.
Yes,
We
they
have
do.
the
So
Batman
over the
Elf,
top.
We have Gun Dude and Gun Whammon, who, come on, just hook up already. Spoilers, they hook up. You have
Alright.
Nux and Gray always neck at neck, and you have both of them absolutely terrified of Urza, the first badass shonen whammy. That's right, I said it. Suck it, Sakura fans. I didn't mean to insult an entire non-existent fan.
Oh, no.
Take that, Sakura fans.
That's
Of course, there are
hilarious.
more issues in the guild that we can't talk about, where Laxus and the Thunder Legion are gallivanting around somewhere, as well as Mystican being a very interesting, very badass
Mystican's
individual.
dead
And then
cool.
we'll talk about
He's from a
him
different
in future
dimension.
time. Again, this video is not going to be covering everything, but I'm going to be talking about a lot. So even though the character interactions in the guild are something you pick up relatively quickly, everyone is different. You can't be like, oh, okay, I get the cardboard cutout character persona, so I kind of understand everyone else. That is very much not the case. The level of quirkiness depends on the level of mainish character of the different guild members of Fairy Tail. I feel like the early introduction of the guild did a fantastic job elaborating how every single character is entirely different, yet somehow has some really weird sync with one another. You have Gray, who always gets naked for no reason.
Yeah, it's funny.
Kana,
I
who's
like that.
always wearing
She's-
her underwear while drunk.
Yep,
And you
she
have
drunk all the
Mary
time. She's
Fun
asking
fact,
for...
literal Satan, and she's adorable.
She's so
Everyone's
sick.
immediately quirky in their own way, and no one even tries to hide any of it. They poke fun
'Cause
at
they
each
just
other, but no one
are
actually
themselves.
gets offended
It's nice
by
to
each
see.
other's insults, because they're also part of this weird, wacky, quirky family. As are you. Natsu and Gray are always fighting, so of course Master Makarov always sends them on missions together. Duh! That's the absolute logical thing to do. So
Yes,
many
of course.
them join the
Of
guild, and
course.
Makarov becomes the de facto dad as well master of the guild. They're not just his metaphorical children, they become his actual children. And like any good dad, when his two sons don't get along, is pair them up together on life and death missions in order to have bro-bonding time. The absolute madman.
Makes sense.
Slowly but surely, you begin to learn the different quirks of this very seemingly dysfunctional yet somehow still functional family, where Loki's trying to pick up chicks, but everyone already knows Loki, so he ain't falling for it. And you have someone like Mystigan, whenever he wants to accept a mission from the guild hall, he'll cast a spell on the guild to put every guild member to sleep so they don't bother him while he walks in, takes the mission request, and walks out. You have to learn to get used to the not-so-dynamic.
Yeah, it's quite crazy.
And that shouldn't work as well as they do, because you're not just following the guild around. You are also an individual quirky member of this guild that can get hyped when the guild kicks butt and can get sad when the guild gets its butt kicked. I emphasize the quirkiness of every individual because one big fatal issue with society nowadays is that everyone wears a mask.
That's very true. Yeah, social media is definitely... Yeah, I definitely agree with this, my god.
Sometimes it's just easier, at least so it seems.
I'm learning to be myself more in public.
Which of course leads to depression, is the idea of someone who can't look squarely at themselves, but have to make believe there's someone they're not, stuffing their true self deeper and deeper inside until someone begins to feel like an empty shell. I feel like a lot of YouTubers go through that, and I've done a lot of research on this subject because of my own personal experiences.
Yes.
But even though it's hard in such a judgmental world, you gotta be who you are. The mask and persona thing does not work. It may be
No, to a degree.
some very transient problem. It'll make you look cool for a bit, maybe make you fit in more with the people you want to fit in with, but it's not you.
They're not who you need to be with, yeah.
Very, very much that every single guild member knows who they are.
Yeah, they ain't wearing a mask. They're themselves.
Shonen is the find yourself trope. It's a trope I very much enjoy, and I feel like it can bond you to a character as well as really develop certain characters. I feel like
I had to watch the last season of My Hero Academia actually as well. Jesus Christ.
Nami doing a great job of that in One Piece, among many, many other characters. As I've mentioned, it's a common trope. Fairy Tail is a guild with characters that flood the entire spectrum of anime trope. The background characters are literally just trope characters in order to fill the shoes of another Fairy Tail member. I'm not saying every Fairy Tail character is written so brilliantly. Oh, the infinite philosophy behind Max, the sand guy. But while the find yourself trope is present in a character like Jalal and the other members of the Crime Sorcier Guild,
Jalal's
does not
cool.
exist in Fairy Tail. Every character in
Although,
Fairy Tail
ridiculous
is
is like, are you sure that's his twin brother? Are you sure that's not like a magical clone that he's gonna like use to like...
The guy who wears a mask to cover his face and never talks to other members of Fairy Tail. He puts them to sleep before walking into the hall to accept a request. That guy never betrays his ideology. It's the same quirky ideology through a different lens of every Fairy Tail member. In the Phantom Lord arc, I will remember this scene forever. It's one of my favorite moments in Fairy Tail. While the guild was battling a rival guild that had far more manpower and this really massive cannon, the Fairy Tail guild was in shambles when they finally won. And of course, different members of the guild were like, "Oh, Mystigan, that butt face, he didn't even show up to help us. We were nearly wiped off the map." But come to think of it, Phantom Lord had 50 other strongholds that they didn't even incorporate into their fighting force against us. Ha! Phantom Lord so stupid, taking us so lightly. And then the next scene, you see Mystigan in a forest with flags. One flag for each of those 50
Oh yeah, I remember that.
draped over trees throughout the entire forest. Mystigan, the mad
He
lad,
took all the
very
others, yeah.
busy, by the way, wiped out 50 strongholds for the sake of his guild. He didn't take an ounce of credit for it because that's not who he
No,
is.
he just does it. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I remember that, yeah.
Any other member of Fairy Tail. Yeah, he has many other reasons for hiding his identity from the other member. Yes, that's all explained. But that moment encapsulates what it really means to be a member of Fairy Tail. Every single member is quirky in their own wacky way. They poke fun at each other, they annoy each other, and they all
that's when you
know
learn
each
about the
other
other
extremely well. They
alternate
are a ridiculous,
reality place
dysfunctional,
where everyone's the opposites,
dysfunctional family where each
and magic
person
isn't
knows
a
exactly who
thing?
They are not hiding behind masks.
Oh, I can't remember.
They are not cowering behind their true ideals while they
That's where
just
happy comes
go
from,
through
isn't it?
the motions of making friends with the other members. Everyone knows exactly who they are, and everyone harbors the same love for the guild as everyone else. So, you, a member of Fairy Tail, at least while you're watching, you are absolutely free. The guild is called Fairy Tail, not of course spelled like fairy tales. It's not like a tale of
An actual tale, a fairy's
No,
tail.
Started because the first guildmaster said, if fairies exist, I wonder if they have tails. And because of that question asked about a creature that might not even exist, a dream upon a dream,
It's quite
the
nice,
Fairy
that,
Tale
yeah.
Guild was created, where everyone can be themselves and dream freely. That is the power of the Fairy Tale Guild. That is the
Yay.
beauty of the guild members of Fairy Tale. I'm not going into individual character analyses. That's not what I'm doing here. But you, as a member of Fairy Tale, are also free to dream. Are also free of your mask because you're accepted for who you are, as long as you.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Ridiculously powerful ideology that is always overlooked. So now, obviously, there needs to be confrontation. The ship
Yes, there
cannot
does.
sail
Throw in the bad
smoothly,
guys.
or else you don't really have a story. If you look at a character as a knife, and in order to really hone the character's character, you need to sharpen the knife. The knife needs to be sharpened against another knife to get rid of the nicks and to hone it further. The next segment we will be talking about is the antagonists of Fairy Tale. Almost every good villain in Shonen has one very crucial thing it needs to get across, and that is a counter-ideology of
Yes.
some form to the protagonist. It has
I love the
to be
two that he's just
meaningful
used there.
that he
Blackbeard is
exists,
definitely the
meaningful that
opposite.
he's defeated,
Pain is
and in
definitely the
order for it to
opposite.
be really scary, it has to somehow threaten what the protagonist holds dear, be it ideals or their friends. Look at the two enemies to Luffy. Luffy is a moral pirate. Blackbeard is an absolute anarchist.
Yes, he
whereas
is.
Akainu is absolute authoritarianism. Akainu is anti the freedom part of One Piece, and Blackbeard
I don't
is
really
against the moral part. You look
think
at someone
about Akainu
like
at all when
Pain,
it comes
he's
to
a
like the
very
opposites and
different
the opposing
ideology
forces to Luffy.
Stain is a different ideology
Huh.
of what it means to be a
Oh,
hero.
mate, Stain was so
Shigaraki is
sick.
an embodiment of chaos as opposed to Deku/All Might, an embodiment of order, and so on and so forth. These guys are good villains. Fairy Tail has, again, a very different approach to all this. Because it does not have a protagonist, have I stressed this point enough? Aside from the Fairy Tail Guild
itself.
every good villain in Fairy Tail needs to have some sort of thematic purpose to counteract the guild.
The actual guild itself, right, okay, yeah.
Like every other shonen villain needs to do. Yes, Zeref has ties to Natsu, just like Pain has ties to Naruto. Big difference is, I barely give a crap about Zeref's ties to Natsu, whereas Pain is such a dynamic opposing
Yes,
force
to Naruto
I
himself,
absolutely
yeah,
love. Now,
cool.
I'm not saying this to harp on Zeref, because Natsu ain't the protagonist, whereas Naruto is. Wow, it's almost like it fits perfectly or something. Zeref's build-up is as follows. He is a good dude. He is a character that very much knows who he is, and what his purpose is, and what he's doing. He's a very gifted mage, and unfortunately, he loses the most dear person in the world. He loses his brother. He then
Oh,
changes
I didn't get
his
this far. I
entire
don't think I ever met
He
Zeref.
does everything he can as this tremendously, wonderfully gifted wizard now dedicates his life to try and bring his brother back to life. He dabbles in all of the dark arts and all of the most forbidden of magic in order to do this tremendous task, and ultimately, he sort of succeeds. He ends up trapping himself in a ridiculous curse. A curse of contradiction. The contradiction being, the more he cares about something, the more that thing will die. Zeref is someone who dedicated his life to bring his brother back to life.
What a curse.
He cherishes the idea of life. He's someone who is a very caring individual. He thinks of certain individuals like his family. He loves nature and all the things around him, and all of a sudden, that becomes his greatest
damn.
No matter how much he loves, and no matter how good-hearted of a person he is, the people around him all die. Whoever he cares about in his proximity dies. He gets really
So he has to not care about shit. Whoa, that's dark.
Animal life ceases to live around him. Birds fall out of the air. Villages he approaches suffer. The curse of contradiction is absolutely brutal. It is something I've never really seen in an anime villain to build him up. The only way he can stop killing those around him is if he stops caring for those around him. So he forces himself to snuff out every bit of empathy in order for the curse to not take hold of everything he holds dear. But once he snuffs out empathy, there is no longer anything he holds dear. Not to mention the fact that he only got this curse of contradiction because he managed to somehow cheat death. He managed to use this forbidden magic to surpass death in order to bring his brother back. So now that he's surpassed death, he is forced to wander for eternity, immortal, as the most terrifying arc wizard.
Damn, that's so
time.
dark and cryptic. I
Legendary
wish I carried on with Fairy Tail. I got so much stuff I need to get back up.
To the most terrifying, and he had no choice in the matter. I absolutely love Zeref's build-up. I feel like almost no character has been done justice to this extent in creating a character to empathize with, as well as a perfect foil to the protagonist of Fairy Tail. What? Because of his ties with Natsu? No! Natsu's not the protagonist! Because of
Fairy Tail's the protagonist!
Now, before I even get into his physical ties, let's quickly and briefly sum up what I said, put into a slightly different light. His core personality traits were caring for his family, willing to give his life for his family, being an empathetic, goodwill person.
And then all that's taken away.
People despised him for looking so deeply into magic to revive the dead. He did not care what people thought of him. He did not wear a mask. He did what he believed was right, and he is the core accentuated personality that you find in Fairy Tail. He's an exact member of Fairy Tail. Everything about him fits so perfectly with the thematic construct of every member of our guild. And due to forces out of his control, it all gets utterly stripped away from him. It is the most tragic progression of his character as a
Damn, yeah, that does sound really tragic.
He's not an ideological adversary because it's not the ideology of Fairy Tail that makes the show go. It's not about the justice of the heroes in My Hero Academia or the adventures of the Straw Hats.
One Piece, yeah.
It's about how much we care about the members of our family in the Guild of Fairy Tail. So as an opposing force, we don't need a counter-ideology. We need a like-minded character that resulted in tragedy. That is the build-up of Zeref, but not only that. If you look at most of the villains in Fairy Tail, they have a very similar thematic purpose, even though, in actuality, they are all very, very different. If you look at the mage August, he is someone who became who he was because of the lack of care that his family gave him. His fight against Gildarts was absolutely amazing, because Gildarts was putting his life on his line for his daughter as a perfect foil to August, who cannot understand the bond between parent and child. You have someone like Irene, who sacrificed absolutely everything for her child. She sacrificed her humanity, her dignity. She suffered tremendously for 400 years, only for the sake of her family, until eventually she snapped. So of course, she fights her own daughter, Urza, who before the fight starts says to her mother, who she finally met after a long time searching, "Thank you so much for abandoning me. If my mother wouldn't have abandoned me, I would have never found
my real family." Jesus!
From the he is the former guild master of Fairy Tail, who took a turn for the worse. So many of the villains in the Tower of Heaven arc, including Jalal himself, were part of the same slave camp that Urza was brought up in. They all share the same familial ties. It's all about that family. It's all a perfect counter to the protagonist of Fairy Tail. A lot of people hate on the power of friendship, and honestly, I do too, to a large extent.
To a degree, yeah, it's been annoying, but sometimes it does have its amazing moments.
Friendship in Fairy Tail and other plot armor in different series, power of friendship is the exact thematic counter to the villain that they are overpowering at any given time. Yes, the power scaling makes absolutely no sense. When Urza...
Yeah, but there's so many shows where it doesn't anyway.
that isn't broken, and she shoots herself up, shatters a meteor, and on the way down, defeats this adversary that's renowned as one of the most powerful witches of all time. Power scaling-wise, total trash. Thematically, absolutely beautiful.
Cool.
But to head back to Zeref a little bit, because he's my second favorite antagonist in the series, and you'll soon see who my favorite is. Zeref then actually did manage to find someone he loved. He found Mavis, someone else who had this curse of contradiction. The people around her started to get ill and die as well, so she banished herself to some faraway forest. She eventually meets Zeref, and they eventually fall in love. Both immortal, so even though they begin to care for one another, they can't kill each other. It's actually a finale of centuries of suffering. He found someone he could love without repercussions. So when they finally hug and kiss, and Zeref finally cries, caring for this other individual with his whole heart once again, finally realizing that his family can exist. He can have a bond with one another. The life within him is not completely snuffed out by this fated curse.
So lovely.
Overpowers hers, and he kills her. That is the last straw. A finale of Zeref's entire character waltzing off into the sunset with Mavis is more than fitting. So even though a lot of hate is targeted at the Fairy Tail villains, none possessing some overly complicated ideology, and not usually being dealt with in overly creative ways that completely make sense within the narrative. Yes, it's annoying! Look, Natsu ate ether nanos, and now he's stronger than Jalal, but his ether nano wears off, so he's back to where he started.
Yeah.
I understand why that could frustrate some people, but if you actually look at the story for what it's trying to say, as opposed to the more superficial aspects of the fight scenes, which, by the way, do matter, Fairy Tail is still really great. Fairy Tail actually accomplishes its thematic storyline in almost every single arc perfectly. So now, forgive me before I talk about my favorite antagonist in Fairy Tail, and I will get to him, I promise.
Coco.
He's amazing, I love him, and you will too, I guarantee it. Something that pairs off very importantly with a good villain are good fight scenes.
Hell yes. Hell
Yes.
yes.
Enthusiast, as most of us are. Most of us probably started watching anime for the fight scenes, and, well, Fairy Tail doesn't exactly do a good job with a lot. I try to look past the more superficial choreography, even though choreography is very important, and Fairy Tail doesn't exactly.
No.
For that one.
Ah, but if it
Every
is consistently
good fight
inconsistent
scene
with its
tells us
choreography.
the way the fight starts, and the way the tide of the battle sways, and in the way the fight ends. It's all a miniature story within the greater story of the arc of the greater story of the series. You find it's told this way in every single good fight scene in anime. I recently uploaded my 800,000 subscriber special, and I talked about
Damn,
my 10
that's
favorite fight
that was a
scenes.
while ago.
Funnily enough, none of them are actually just really cool animation and choreography. There's always some sort of deeper thing
Yeah,
going on.
something else going on within the fight,
Albior
yeah.
isn't a battle of strength, it's a battle of ideals. Esterosa versus Escanor isn't a battle of strength, it's a battle of their opposing psychologies, on how each of them suffers in their
Of course that attack hurt me, it was my attack.
the cool choreography, as much as it's amazing, because of the overall theme of hard work versus natural talent. So now, as a kind of subcategory of villains, we need to have good fight scenes. Now let's talk about the fights of Fairy Tail.
Yo.
As I've mentioned, every fight, at least with the good ones, needs to be a little encapsulated story of the overarching themes of whatever the hell is going on. So if you look at the basic outline of Fairy Tail fights, well, almost everyone is disappointed and they are shat on YouTube constantly. Granted, choreography's not the greatest ever. To be fair, the choreography in One Piece isn't that fantastic either. No, it completes.
Yeah, but it's not about the fights. The fights aren't important to
Dragon
One Piece.
Ball's not great, but everyone loves Dragon Ball fight scenes. There's another problem with Fairy Tail. The issue, or at least the so-called issue/problem, is the lack of impact in the fight's finale. As I've mentioned, when building up villains in Fairy Tail does a tremendously good job. Jalal being part of the slave camp, Zeref having the curse of contradiction, whatever the hell it may be. Villain build-up is great, but it's really hard to solidify a villain as a fantastic villain if the villain takedown is not. This is a flaw that many people like to point fingers at Fairy Tail for, because a lot of the fights end in the same slightly underwhelming fashion. Natsu eats Ether Nano to defeat Jalal, loses Ether Nano powers for later. Natsu eats Golden Fire Thingo to fight against Zero, loses Golden Fire powers for later. Natsu eats Laxus' lightning against Hades, isn't nearly as awesome with that lightning power later. It's always some generic power-up that doesn't even fully flesh into the story, that usually doesn't even impact the greater story past that. It's not hard work.
It's just like a
on Natsu's
moment.
part that let him pull through at the very last second. It's at the very best. Power of friendship. Yeah, I said it. But just like when I was talking about the Fairy Tail members segment, the power of friendship fits in the theme of Fairy Tail far better than hacks, plot boosts to protect your friends do in most other series. It's not Naruto is fighting to become the greatest Hokage, and also he happens to have friends. The core theme of Fairy Tail is this family. So while the theme is nice to stress that the main character is winning with the power of friendship, well, it doesn't exactly make the fight scene all that riveting. I personally, and I'm going to be stretching the envelope on the definition of fight scenes here, think the fight scenes in Fairy Tail are actually pretty great as well. Now, not at all in the normal definition of what a fight scene is, though, but honestly, that doesn't even really matter all that much. I will elaborate, so please hang on for a second. In a series like Naruto, Dragon Ball, My Hero Academia, or Black Clover, the goal is to become the strongest at something. The
Yes.
hero, the Wizard King, the Hokage,
The number one
one
hero,
to
yeah.
beat his opponent for the sake of winning. Whatever it is, the idea is becoming stronger. So since that is the theme at work, pushing the protagonist forward, they have to overpower their opponents through strength. Strength has to be that breaking point that allows the main characters to push forward and get
Yeah.
into their next challenge with their heads held held high. Because of this, Naruto overpowering Pain, Asta managing to beat Veto with help from his guild, Deku and his squad managing to take down Stain, or Goku literally overpowering everyone ever. That's something that needs to happen.
Yeah, we need to see it. We need to know that they're making progression within, like, their goal. Yeah.
Is growth oriented on a power basis. Let's say Goku, before fighting his generic opponent, for the sake of argument, has a power level of just a wee bit over 9,000.
My God.
Crazy, I know. And
9,000.
his opponent has a power
That's
level
impossible.
of 100,000. So the enemy is like
Cool.
way stronger.
You've been trading.
Goku. Now, at their first squabble in the beginning of the arc, let's say, he slaps the craps out of Goku. Goku has, like, no chance against him, but because he's a resilient Saiyan warrior that pushes forward, he manages to unlock a new form, and by the end of the arc, bammo! Power level of 1 trillion!
1 trillion!
Slight hyperbole on my part, but it's not that far off, okay? Being that the power growth is the overall story, the tale of any individual fight needs to take that turn. Now, if Goku's power was completely retconned after the fight, like Natsu's Ether Nano wore off, Goku forgot how to go into Super Saiyan. He can't do that ever again. That would be a slap in the face to everyone.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but it doesn't affect Fairy Tail. Right.
The narrative of that arc cannot be counteracted, and the flow of the story fits nicely. Fairy Tail has a very different perspective of all of that. Natsu, well, he doesn't have some massive goal of becoming the strongest ever. In fact, he's not even the protagonist of the series.
We keep saying.
The Fairy Tail Guild, and it's that guild that's evolving every individual member, as well as integrating them with one another, and with us, the viewer. The proper evolution of any fight scene needs to be from that standpoint as well. And I will give you several examples of this. I love making fun of Natsu eating Ether Nano to beat Jalal in the Tower of Heaven arc. I love it because it's an exact quintessential point that everyone likes to poke fun at Fairy Tail for. But the overall message of that arc is that overcoming of your past, that real bond with your family, and picturing what you really care about as opposed to what left you behind. I'm not going to spoil every detail of that arc because this video would be even longer than it actually is. But Urza is left absolutely shattered at the end of the Tower of Heaven arc. It's more than just she saw the ghosts of her past. She was literally dragged down to the depths of her mental hell from before she joined Fairy Tail. This arc is where she was living in two completely diametrically opposed universes. The world of Fairy Tail that she became so entrenched in, it literally became her actual family, and the family she left behind. Well, not her real one, but the ones she grew up with in this slave camp that she really cared about. This arc tore at Urza's psyche to a tremendous degree, and it was up to Natsu, this guy who's even weaker than Urza, this guy that's essentially the little brother of Queen of the Fairies Titania, Urza Scarlet, stands up to the playing field, and even though he should stand no chance, he actually managed.
He rises to the occasion. Let's go. Boom. Great fight.
The moment of Natsu stepping forward to fight Jalal, even though, by all logic,
shouldn't be able to win.
all power scaling feats, Natsu should have no chance.
Power scaling! That makes no sense.
Nano garbage in order for that one period of time actually managed to overpower Jalal and actually managed to free Urza from the shackles bonding her to her past, saying that no, your actual family will put their life on the line for you in an instant. The objective of that battle is not Natsu growing to the next level of power, and not Natsu fighting some counter ideology. This is a hurdle for Urza to overcome, and her family steps in and helps her out to do it. That is why the fight scenes in Fairy Tail are actually great. The emotional impact that a lot of them hold is out of the league of the majority of other anime fights. And I'll give you another example from this current arc that just ended. Invel is this really powerful ice wizard dude. In fact, he's so strong, no one has a chance against him until he's defeated by the power of friendship, of course. He's up against Ray and Juvia, and he has this ridiculously powerful ice necklace thingamahoosamabah that can take over the mind of his opponent. Yeah, pretty broken. So
that's OP. That's
it
pretty OP.
No fam, this ain't it, Chief. So he decides, okay, so we'll make your demon powers take you over. He puts these mind control necklace nigos on Juvia and on Gray, and commands them both to kill each other. His plan is, Gray is way stronger than Juvia. He'll kill her, he'll fall into a really sorrowful state. His demon powers will take him over, he'll join the bad guys. Great plan, Invel, extremely cool. And
wow, that's
dark. Really think about it, both Gray and Juvia come to the same conclusion and attempt to kill themselves. It's the only choice. To hurt a precious member of the family that you care so much about, killing yourself is the easy way out. It's the only option. Fighting this other family member? That doesn't even fall into the equation. Juby then had this water pipe thingo that she was able to give Gray a transfusion. Gray was able to survive, and Gray, in a massive fit of rage, absolutely obliterates Invel. Power scaling wise, Invel was really strong, and in fact should have been more powerful than Gray.
Nah.
Power scaling does not.
Emotional fights for the win.
The obstacle to overcome, as I mentioned, isn't a growth in power, it's the growth in bonds of your friends. It's becoming more and more entrenched in this beautiful family of fairy tale. The powerful moment isn't taking down the bad guy that's threatening to destroy the universe. The powerful moment is Gray and Juvia immediately, simultaneously, attempting to end their own lives so they don't lay a hand on one another. That's the high impact moment. Right after this takes place, we're back with Makarov. Makarov is facing an army of like 14 trillion dudes or whatever, and even though everyone in his guild is fighting and being slowly overpowered, Makarov decides it's time to use Fairy Law. Fairy Law is this ridiculously broken technique that you basically convert your life energy into this massive spell that takes out anyone you deem as an enemy. That is, until you run out of life energy and die. There are too many opponents for him to just use some life energy on, and if he uses Fairy Law, he knows that this is the end for him. Yes, the choreography's not great, but no, that doesn't matter. He uses Fairy Law and sacrifices his life to take down a massive amount of enemy troops. He doesn't want to chance his children getting overrun by these foes.
Damn.
This was the only option. The scene then changes because Natsu and Gray are in a feud because of whatever plot reasons required. And as Natsu and Gray both attack each other with an extremely ridiculously broken attack, Urza jumps in the way and with her bare hands blocks both Natsu and Gray, freezing one of her hands and burning her other hands to nearly ash. Power scaling wise, it makes no sense that Urza was able to block those attacks. Urza should have been obliterated with no armor, no magic, just standing in between these ridiculously broken forbidden magic attacks. But it doesn't matter. She blocks them, and she's crying, and she snaps the hell out of whatever ridiculous garbage was going through Natsu and Gray's mind at that time. That moment is so powerful. Power scaling wise, granted, absolutely trash. The emotions evoking from the audience at this time, absolutely next level. Our master Makarov just gave his life to protect his children, and here you two are fighting it out with one another? That is a punch to the soul!
Yeah,
that
man.
is what a high impact moment in fairy tale is. That is how the protagonist of fairy tale, guild of fairy tale, evolves. That is why the fights in fairy tale have meaning too. It's not all about overcoming your opponent in strength or an ideology. Fairy tale, the protagonist is not an individual. The protagonist is the guild itself. So now that I've talked about villains, and now that I've talked about fight scenes, it's time to dedicate an entire segment to the Grand Magic Games. My favorite arc.
You see, this is where I stopped just before this.
Who hate it to its entirety.
The Grand Magic Games.
When I think amazing anime tournament arcs, the Grand Magic Games is in the forefront of my mind. There is no doubt that I absolutely love this arc. Not my favorite tournament arc ever, but definitely one of the
It's up there. Right, okay, fair enough.
Here is some complaints about the Grand Magic Game. It's just a damn sports tournament. It's not like there's this massive plot twist within the tournament itself, like in the Junin exams, where it was a massive terrorist attack against the Leaf Village. It's not this game that even has a threat of death, like the Dark Tournament in Yu Yu Hakusho. It's just like, I don't know, festival where guys are having fun for absolutely no purpose at all. Yada yada. Some complaints about the power scaling, choreography, whatever. We already talked about that stuff. But here's why you're all wrong about the Grand Magic Game.
Okay.
It encapsulates the core of fairy tale very damn well. Right after a 7-year time.
Yeah, there's a time skip, isn't there?
The
Yeah.
reputation of the Fairy Tale Guild is in absolute shambles. All the strongest members just disappear for 7 years and somehow manage to come back. The Grand Magic Games is this yearly tournament that all the guilds participate in, and they get ranked, and they get street cred, and they get respect for how well they participate in this tournament. Not to mention they get money. But more on that. Now, after these 7 long years, and now that the reputation of the Fairy Tale Guild,
Yeah, it's like, let's go, win, and get our reputation back up in the game.
time to participate in their first Grand Magic Game, or perhaps the reputation of Fairy Tale can come back. Over these 7 years that they were gone, though, a lot has changed. Sabretooth is the new top guild in town, and they have literally everything as a one-up on Fairy Tale. Their main squad has someone that uses Dimension Magic, which is kind of like an upgrade to Urza's Dimension Magic, where she just summons weapons. They have
Swords
this
and
dude
spears
who
and
uses
things from
memory
anywhere.
magic. He can create anything out of just memory, which is a upgrade over Gray's Ice Make Magic, where he creates things out of ice. They have 2 third-generation Dragon Slayers, which are an upgrades to Natsu and Gachi, being Dragon Slayers.
Okay,
and
cool.
They have a Lightning God God Slayer, which is an upgrade to Laxus being a lightning dragon slayer. They are a new and improved, high-tech, high-functioning fairy tale guild that is wiping the floor with the competition. They are flexing so hard on everyone, and Fairy Tale's reputation is down in the dumps. Now, what have we learned so far? The protagonist of Fairy Tale is Fairy Tale. We, the viewers, don't just relate to the protagonist, we feel like we are a part
of it, yeah.
Our guild and our family was berated for 7 years. We traveled along with the members that got the 7-year time skip, not with the ones that were insulted. We come back to our guild with a tarnished reputation, and we are going to be there when the guild comes back full force. So, the Grand Magic Games is a tournament where in the beginning you're not exactly sure what's going to go on, but it results in a massive flex-off where Fairy Tale absolutely flexes on the competition in the most badass way possible, while simultaneously saving the kingdom from a massive dragon attack. Not the point. If I wanted to go into detail about every amazing moment of the Grand Magic Games, this video would be way more than double the length. But the purpose of Fairy Tale is not to vanquish the big massive foes. It's not to become the greatest Hokage of all the guilds. Fairy Tale is about us, the viewers. It is about all of our individual stories where we are free to dream alongside the members of our family. And that family was put through so much crap over the last 7 years. We are going to be enjoying every instant of it reclaiming its glory.
That's true, yeah, I get that. If you feel like you belong and you see that everyone's getting the moments, it's like, yes, let's go, let's keep going, boom, 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 show them who's boss.
She can. Natsu is gonna ditch his teammate Gajil to take on the Twin Dragons alone, because he can. Fairy Tale is gonna get 2 of their squads into the top 8, not just one elite one, because they can. Laxus is gonna obliterate the entire Raven Tail guild because he can. Natsu is gonna attack the Sabertooth guild leader alone because he can. The Grand Magic Games is absolutely amazing. It is quintessential and perfect for Fairy Tale's narrative. It is exactly what Fairy Tale is trying to do. It's not lame, because they're not fighting some evil massive force that's trying to take over the universe, because Fairy Tale is almost a slice of life first and a shonen battle manga second. Fairy Tale's tragic moments are amazing because we're crying watching what our family is going through. When Urza was fighting against Tartaro's demon woman, who stole her sense of sight, smell, and sound, and also increased her sensitivity to pain tremendously. Feeling the breeze against her skin was like feeling herself getting ripped to pieces by a flesh-eating Bakugo, damn it! But she was getting battered and tattered in this fight. The other people in the same room as her that weren't even the targets of these sensitivity spells could not move. Moving means more air touching your skin, meaning more pain and suffering. But Urza, with no senses, allowed herself to get beaten up so she could feel the pain of where her opponent's attacks
damn, that's hardcore.
And annihilate them through suffering.
That's very, what's his name? Bleach. Kenpachi fighting the dude in the dark, taking a sword to the... getting stabbed so we knew where he was, kind of thing. That was kind of cool. It's always cool seeing stuff like that.
We feel with the emotional highs and lows of our guild. We cry alongside them, and we will laugh. We will laugh hard alongside them as they flex on everyone that tormented them for 7 years. The Grand Magic Games is the uplifting heart and soul of Fairy Tale. The people that hate Fairy Tale will hate the Grand Magic Games the most because it has the least quote-unquote themes, plot, or tragic drama. So if you hate Fairy Tale, you hate the Grand Magic Games. But if you love Fairy Tale, then nothing beats these moments where our guild stands triumphant. I dedicated an entire segment of this video to the Grand Magic Games because I feel like it encapsulates the heart of Fairy. I feel like I've expressed why I appreciate how the villains are created, why I appreciate the themes present in the fight scenes, and why those themes are fantastic whether they're tragic or whether they're massive flexes. I've covered the individuality of the guild members as the support cast and the protagonist, which is the Fairy Tale guild itself. That is all of the basic structures that make up a shonen anime. They all follow this one very core, very carnal theme. A theme that I think anyone that actually sticks through Fairy Tale can relate to a tremendous degree. When starting Fairy Tale, I can understand why someone would not immediately fall in love with the series. I can see why it takes time to build...
Don't know, I did quite like it. I'm remembering why I fell off, and you might get annoyed by this, but I was watching it dubbed, and then at the time I had to wait 70 months for the next season to be dubbed, and then I just fell off because I got fed up waiting for the dubs back in the day. This is back in the day.
surprise tragic moments.
Because once I watch something dubbed, I find it hard to watch it subbed because I can't get used to the voices for that much. Don't watch many dubbed anime now, though.
Now that I think I've elaborated where all the pieces fall in regard to the individual characters and their interactions, I would like to talk about the setting. A lot of people complain about Fairy Tail's very mundane world building, and to that I have to say I agree. While I feel like a member of the Fairy Tail Guild, I know nothing past the walls of the guild. Yes, seems like a
so not much world building itself.
Empire thing out. It's not a world I like to explore, and that's not even necessarily a bad thing. To Fairy Tail's defense, the only thing we really need is the guild itself and the bonds the guilds make. And that is why a lot of people hate the final arc of Fairy Tail, but I kind of really like it. Aside from the high impact moments or whatever, it's all the bonds and all the friends that Fairy Tail made along the way that are coming together to help out our family. Remember that time where we hated Sabretooth and we grew past our differences by kicking their butts? Well, Sabretooth has a lot of debts to repay at this point, and they pay in spades. I think one of my favorite moments in the entire arc was Ichiya saving ass. Ichiya, this random dude from the Blue Pegasus Guild that they befriended so long ago, and his most ridiculous power set ever, saves the day twice. He saves the Thunder Legion right at the beginning of the arc, and this mad lad challenges Acnologia. World building is something I always find interesting, because depending on the main focus of the story's themes, it needs to do something entirely different. One Piece develops this massive political, brilliant world map, and I don't think I've seen anything with better world building than One Piece.
No, One Piece's world building is absolutely incredible, and oh my god.
Fairy Tail is about our guild and our bonds with the guilds we befriended and, well, got into squabbles with in the past. The world building in Fairy Tail is so much more focused on old bonds.
World building is relationship building.
And much less to the different ecosystems or political environments of different places. Naruto is so entrenched in history, where the history and lore of every ninja tribe is so damn awesome. I want to know the history of every different villain. My Hero Academia, world building wise, is only interesting because of how quirks affect society. So seeing the different social uprisings in different areas,
seeing the villains rise up and that.
Issues that arise from quirks popping up is absolutely fascinating. I don't know anything about history, and I don't know anything about different political ecosystems like Naruto or One Piece, but My Hero Academia works in its own regard of world building. And the same goes with Fairy Tail. Fairy Tail is not about the grandiose politics of One Piece. It's not about the rich history and lore behind every nation like Naruto, and it is not about the interesting society about how they maintain life in this new quirk-infested environment. World building wise, Fairy Tail is about the bonds our family has made with the others around us. So, from a world building and setting perspective, I think Fairy Tail cashes out. I think Fairy Tail's final arc actually does put its right foot forward, incorporating every bond we've made with anyone ever in this massive showdown, where Shelia sacrifices her powers to fight against Time God Whammon, where Crime Sorcière, well, doesn't really do much, but they try, goddammit, and the whole idea of Crime Sorcière is misfits that don't fit in anywhere, that all have this interesting connection to Fairy Tail or Jalal that bring them together as this militant vigilante unit that is pretty badass in its own way. And again, it all comes back down to this familial aspect of how I feel like, as a member of Fairy Tail, these bonds we forged with everyone over all of our different missions actually matter to me and to my guildmates. So now, I've pretty much covered everything there is to talk about in regard
So who is his favorite
villain?
villain?
Setup and why it matters and why it hits hard in Fairy Tail's regard. So as a grand finale, I would like to talk about my favorite character in Fairy Tail, Laxus. His story encapsulates everything that I
He is an interesting guy.
to you from this story. So just by going through the various steps in his build-up, it very much solidifies what I'm trying to say. When I mentioned
He starts off as a dick.
Fairy Tail, it's because Laxus is my favorite antagonist in Fairy Tail. In the Thunder Palace arc, Laxus is introduced as this really annoying, spoiled brat. This dude is the grandson of Makarov, the leader of Fairy Tail, and this guy wants none of it. He wants to take over. He does not agree with the lax, annoying
he fights them all, man. It's like, whoa!
Especially because his grandfather kicked his father out of the guild for being a dumbass. But we'll get to that later. With a heavy heart, he challenges the entire Fairy Tail guild to a little challenge. He and his 3 members of his Thunder Legion will fight the entire Fairy Tail. If he can win, Fairy Tail belongs to him. If he can lose, well then, you can kill him. He's an extremely powerful antagonist.
He's very strong, Jesus.
Someone that the different members of the guild have their own individual bonds with. So this member of our family has turned against us because his father, former member of our family. Again, thematically, he is torn between his father and his grandfather. He doesn't know where to stand, and in the end, he selects power and challenges the actual guild. So now, I'm not going to go through the entire Thunder Palace arc, because while I do enjoy it a lot, I'm going to stick to Laxus' basic development, just to try and get my point across. In the grand finale of the Thunder Palace arc, when he's up against, guess who? Natsu! What? No way! And
Crazy.
he's at his wit's end, he thinks he's gonna lose, he unleashes Fairy Law. Fairy Law, as I've mentioned before, ridiculously broken attack. Anyone that you deem as an enemy is absolutely obliterated by this ridiculously broken forbidden technique. It's his last resort. He's about to lose, so he decides, heck yeah, I'm gonna win this one. When he uses Fairy Law, it does nothing. He does not deem any member in Fairy Tail as his enemy in this one. So Fairy Law is ineffective entirely. This big bad exterior that Laxus was putting up all along, at the end of the day, was an exterior.
Yeah, man. So sick. It's like, oh, wait, what? I care about these people?
That Fairy Tail stresses. He wasn't working out in Fairy Tail because he couldn't figure out which family he belonged to, and he could not fully embody what he believed in. This moment is mind-blowing. The ruthless Laxus loves his family despite everything he's been doing. And when he eventually is defeated, in this really tragic moment, his grandfather kicks him out of the guild like his father. But in that moment, where Laxus is actually evicted from the guild, that is when he becomes, in his heart, a member of Fairy Tail. That is when he realizes where his home is as he's kicked out. There was a sign that he always had with his grandfather when he was a kid, that no matter how crowded the streets are and he wouldn't be able to see him, if you raise your hand in the air in the Fairy Tail pose, which kind of looks like you're calling someone a loser, but let's not think about it. It means that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I am there with you and I love you. Maybe it's cringy, I don't know, but in the Master Festival at the end of the Thunder Palace arc, when Laxus is on his way out of the town that Fairy Tail is situated in, he turns back to take a look at the guild that he just obliterated and put through the ringer, and he sees every single member of the Fairy Tail guild with their hand outstretched into the sky in that pose, saying, I am watching you, I care about you, and I love you whatever you are and whatever you're doing. And Laxus, the absolute mad lad, Chad, savage beast, breaks down into tears. And when they're up against Hades, several arcs later, the old second master of Fairy Tail, and he's about to defeat Fairy Tail because he is ridiculously broken, as a final appearance in Pops Laxus. No longer a member of Fairy Tail in name, but a member of Fairy Tail in heart. And, well, he inadvertently definitely does save the day. Well, directly at one point and inadvertently another in that very same arc. Laxus' character encapsulates exactly what I love in an antagonist for Fairy Tail. A complete counter to Fairy Tail's actual ideology. On the one hand, he loves them, but on the other hand, he can't. He also can't stay true to himself, which is also something that Fairy Tail is very much
confliction
within.
within.
Push comes to shove and the arc ends and he's kicked from the guild, he truly becomes a member of Fairy Tail in heart, even though he's no longer a member of Fairy Tail in name, completely flipping that switch. He comes back, of course, because he truly loves the guild. In the Grand Magic Games, he takes down his father, severing his ties with his past that kept him away from his family, and in a complete show of selflessness in the Tartaros arc, when Bane particles are spreading throughout the entire city, Bane particles being this ridiculously poisonous demon spell thingo that kills anyone that breathes them in. Well, it doesn't exactly kill them, it just, it's not so bad. It puts them in excruciating pain until they die out of pain. And Laxus,
mean.
Dragon Slayer lungs, breathes in every Bane particle that was meant to take down the entire city, and he is suffering through that pain, not willing to give up for the next several years until he eventually manages to expel them, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It is the ultimate character development, the ultimate back and forth, encapsulating every theme I love about Fairy Tail. That's why Laxus is my favorite character. This is why Fairy Tail is an amazing anime. It's not a bad anime that I hate, it's not a bad anime
that you love.
It's not a perfect anime by any means, but it's a great anime, and I very much love it.
Personal passion.
Everything I've said until this point is from an objective standpoint. Obviously, all art is subjective, and therefore you have full right to enjoy it if you like, and hate it if you don't like. But objectively, I'm trying to make a case for why Fairy Tail isn't only not as bad as people say,
but
actually good in many degrees that other shonen cannot reach. Now I want to talk about it on a slightly more personal level. Not necessarily personal as in, I was attacked by enemy ninja, so I threw a Fairy Tail Blu-ray DVD disc thingo at them, and it allowed me to escape. Fairy Tail is forever my favorite anime. Not exactly what I mean by personal. I mean, this is a personal appreciation I have for Fairy Tail, and I think it affects many people in a very similar way, which is why its following is massive despite the backlash one receives from saying they like Fairy Tail. Stupid as that sounds. When I watched Fairy Tail, it was kind of the right place and the right time for me to experience this type of show. I myself, at that point, was very lost. I did not know who I was, I did not know what I was planning on doing, and I was kind of just going through the motions, wearing whatever mask I needed mentally to fit into any situation at all. I had no per se passion for anything, and I didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything. Now, I don't want to say it's thanks to Fairy Tail that I managed to overcome that challenge, because, well, it's not. Fairy Tail just happened to be with me at that time, and being that I've been watching Fairy Tail for like a goddamn decade, I've been living with this series at every turning point of my life. At the point where I was not happy with myself and had to wear this metaphorical mask, all the way to where I am now. I know YouTubers complain about not being in a healthy mind state, but I am very grateful for the progress I've seen myself make over the last bunch of years. And just like the different characters in Fairy Tail are always acclimating with each other better and better, where their bonds grow stronger and stronger as they learn to become more of who they are, where they can follow their own dreams and they can have whatever quirky nature they want with no repercussions from the other members of their family. That's been very similar to my experience as well. If you've seen my channel, you know I'm a relatively quirky dude. I'm not the most, let's just say, normal individual on the face.
He's got no legs!
People that actually like Fairy Tail don't make videos defending Fairy Tail because it's like taboo almost. You cowards? No, honestly, I don't blame you at all. I totally see it. For a coward, I'm putting my heart and soul into this Fairy Tail video because no one else on YouTube did. I know I'm gonna get crap for it, and honestly, I don't care. This is my perspective of something that means a hell of a lot to me. And it's not just me. There are many people that connect to Fairy Tail. There are many people that live in a society where they too have to wear a mask wherever they go. Where they too want to be free to dream. Where they too want to actually be themselves instead of try and emulate something they're not for the sake of those watching. Everyone judges. Everyone judges to the point that if you made a bad joke 10 years ago on Twitter, that tweet can be pulled up in front of you now.
Yeah, Jesus.
We live in an extremely judgmental world. Wearing masks became a habituated way to survive, and it is not healthy. But in this wonderful guild of Fairy Tail, a place where everyone's quirky natures are completely out and about, where anyone can dream, where anyone can become what they want to become, and they have people around them that care about them for who they are, not who they're trying to make believe they are. A guild that welcomes anyone as long as you have the right shaped heart and the ability to dream. The ideal of what Fairy Tail is, and the beauty of this guild is so welcoming to so many people. People who never had to undergo mental ups and downs, I believe, are the majority of the people that don't like Fairy Tail. Fairy Tail is for people who society would deem rejects if they would.
I mean, like I said, the only reason I dropped off was because of like the way I was watching it dubbed. I could see myself getting back into Fairy Tail. And is Eden Zero any good? I added that on my watch list on Netflix.
Thank you so much for your many years of friendship. And it's not a friendship that's over yet. It's on to new horizons for both Fairy Tail and for every single Fairy Tail fan and viewer. This video wasn't meant to discuss every positive theme or detail over the course of the Fairy Tail story. It was meant to tell you why I think Fairy Tail is great. So, even though the Fairy Tail anime did end, and even though I'm approaching the end of my tribute to my happy years spent with Fairy Tail, it's on to new horizons with new adventures in an unknown future. But you gotta remember to embrace that quirky side of yourself. You have to remember to be yourself and not just live a masked life. It's important to have dreams, and it's important to try and reach them, because no matter where you are or what you're doing, we will always be members of Fairy Tail. Remember to like and subscribe, as well as show it to any of your Fairy Tail fan/hater friends to see what they think about it. But most importantly of all,
stay weird, fam.
Remember to stay weird, fam.
Right, where's my Gajil Funko Pop? I will show quickly. Oh, I've got a couple of others, but like, yeah, Dragon Force Gajil. I thought that was pretty damn cool looking. But that was a good video. That was a nice video into why it's good. I appreciate the differences in the approach and how the protagonists are different and how it stands out from other shonens. And I like how he appreciates as well why people don't like it. It's always I feel like if you like something, you should understand why other people don't as well. You shouldn't just be that person that just completely argues. You should be able to have the discussion and that. That's good, I'm glad I checked that out. It's been a while coming. And just random things to do with Fairy Tail reminded me to get into that. So anyway, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of your video, I upload links in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is all I have to help support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for that. And yeah, I'm on TikTok and Instagram. Just search Pixel Party Pals. And thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. I'll see you guys next time.